Argument analysis is the section that has the highest answer rate in the final exam, yet on average is the lowest scoring section. Strange. So this is why in this video, we are going to look at the technical structure for argument analysis, which fulfills what the assessors are looking for and which helped me immensely in all my SACs and final exam. Alright, welcome back everyone. As you may have guessed, the main focus of this video will be on how you can write a better argument analysis. And I'll put more attention on the body paragraphs since this is where it's easiest to lose the most marks. But I'll still skim over the other sections. Starting from the introduction, there is a lot of variety here. But in my opinion, the best introduction is the one that you can write in about 5 to 7 minutes. So you don't want to spend too much time here. But if you're curious, here is the structure that I followed, and you don't have to use this exactly. However, I do recommend that you have the following key points. So you can pause and read this. On the left is the structure, and on the right is an example. Now, before I move on to body paragraphs, I want to address perhaps the more pressing question, which is, do we even need body paragraphs? And the short answer is no. For argument analysis, there is no strict structure. You could have 5 introductions and 27 body paragraphs if you really wanted to, but we want to think of the way to best optimize our marks. So to clarify, the way you lay out your piece is not that important, but I personally found that using 3 paragraphs was optimal because most articles can be split into 3 main parts, whether that's based off the subject that they're talking about, the target audience, or maybe the tone. And by splitting it this way, this allows you to group similar ideas together, making your essay more logical overall. But regardless of which way you write, the following tips that I'm going to share can be applied to any style. Alright, so just as an example, I'm going to be going through the first paragraph for one of my essays. And it's broken into these segments, so it's visually easier to see, but in an exam, this would be all combined into one paragraph. So like my other essays, I follow a teal structure with 6Es, not 2. And this example here will be on an article that expresses their view on should we change the date for Australian Day. Okay, first we have our topic sentence, and the topic sentence should contain 3 elements, which are audience, argument type, and purpose. And our example topic sentence is, from the outset, the author employs a largely logical argument to expose socially engaged readers to the ignorance of those who do not want to change the date of Australian Day. So the audience in this case is socially engaged readers, which is just a really fancy way of saying people who care about issues facing society. So you can definitely use this phrase in your own essays. And then the argument type is a logical argument. So please specify what the argument type is. So is it a logical argument, a sympathetic argument, or a condemnatory argument? This is extremely important for the new study design. And if you want a list of more argument types and other key phrases, then I recommend watching this video up here because it shows you what you can memorize for argument analysis. And then we have the purpose. So what is the author aiming to do? Which in this case, the purpose is to expose these readers to the ignorance of those who don't want to change. So that is our topic sentence. Then moving on to our 2 E's, rather than thinking about it as evidence and explanation, it's better to think about it as the how, what, why structure, because this is just a bit more specific. So as mentioned in the structure of my text response essay, what is what the subject is. The how is your quote, so how is the author showing something, and then why. Why did the author say this? And here it's really good to identify what the intended reaction for your audience is. And more specifically, how are the audience positioned to think, feel, and respond. So let's see this in action. The author begins by stripping all notions of tradition by claiming when she first arrived in Australia in 1992, January 26 was not even a national holiday. So this is an example of how and what. What is basically what the author is talking about. So in this case, how Australian Day wasn't even a national holiday. And how is just your quote. And then moving on, this is designed to spur patriots to realize the excitement they have on Australian Day does not carry any traditionalistic significance. This is your why, or intended response for the audience. So how are the audience meant to think, feel, and respond at this stage? In this case, the audience is meant to reflect and think about how Australian Day is not so much of an ingrained holiday as some may think. And so they shouldn't have like a sense of attachment to something that hasn't been around for that long. And then moving on, and thus they are likely to be more receptive to the author's following arguments regarding why a date change is necessary. So this is just the second part of that sentence, still about why. And this is how the audience is meant to respond. Audiences are likely to respond by being more receptive to the writer's later arguments. So if you're struggling with why, just think about how are the audiences meant to think, feel, and respond. And you don't need all three, but you can kind of pick maybe one or two. So in this case, I have think and I have respond. And that is the basics of our how, what, why structure. But this is actually not complete by itself. And this is because the new study design wants us to analyze how the author's arguments are structured. So I'm going to introduce something called the who, what, when, where, why, how structure. Definitely a mouthful, but it's not as scary as it seems because you're not using this for every single block. This is basically an extension or an embellishment to the how, what, why structure. So what we have before, the how, what, why, that is still our foundation, but we are just adding 3 extra elements once per paragraph. And these extra elements are who, when, and where. And I've actually already included them in that sample paragraph we had before. So let's check that out. Who refers to the audience. So who is the article being targeted towards? And for this, you want to be specific with your audience. You don't want to say readers, say logical readers. Don't say audience, say sympathetic audiences. And in the case of this example, the audience are patriots or patriotic Australians. So people who take pride and are proud of their country. And when and where, you can basically group these together because they refer to when and where does the author position an argument. For example, is it from the outset does the author begin by doing something? Even though these are only one-word additions, they add a lot of value to your piece. And other phrases that you can include are having established an idea, the author then goes on to say something else, or you could say in a final call to action, ... But basically, you want to show the marker that you understand where and when an argument is located. So does the author talk about something after they have established an idea, or do they end their argument in a particular way? And these are both examples of where and when. And if you want more examples, then you can also check out that video from before, but I'll also link it in the description. And as I mentioned, you don't need all 6 of these in every single block. Once per paragraph is plenty enough. So this is the basic building block of your essay, regardless of which form it takes. And if you're writing in paragraphs, then I recommend you have 3 of these how, what, why blocks for each paragraph. And then if you're doing a comparative argument analysis, so 2 or more articles, then I would do 2 blocks on text A and then 1 block on text B. But this can vary. So for example, you could do 2 and 2 or 3 and 1. So really up to you in this case. And if you choose to analyze an image, then this can take up one of your blocks. For example, this 3rd block here is actually an analysis on an image. And to analyze this image, we use a slightly different, but not entirely different structure. And I call it SSS. So yes, a lot of acronyms in this video, but I will summarize all of them at the end. So these stand for section, suggest, and support. So first we want to describe a section of the image because talking about every single detail in an image might take too many words. So for example, for this image here, we can say the article is complemented by a photograph of a black sign saying 26 Jan 1788, lest we forget, with flowers surrounding it. Then suggest. So what does this section of this image suggest about the topic? Okay, so by associating the date with a common phrase used for Anzac Day, coupled with the ring of flowers, which is common at funerals, this suggests that the 26th of January was also a day of atrocity and death. And then the final S, support. So how does this support the author's view or article? Therefore, this supports the author's view that the date needs to be changed since deaths should not be celebrated. And that's it. That's how you would analyze an image. And then finally, we have our linking sentence, and that's just one sentence summarizing what the audiences are meant to be feeling or thinking at this stage of the argument. So for example, the author initially plays on the logical response of readers in an attempt for them to reject the views of those who are ignorant of the history behind the current date. That is the basic structure for a paragraph, and then you'll just repeat this 3 times for an entire essay. And of course, at the very end, you have your conclusion, which is extremely short, 2 sentences, and like the intro, it is very flexible. So I'll just show you the way I like to go about it, but it's definitely not the only way. So the first sentence, I like to talk about the author's main argument style and contention, so just summarize that. And then second, ultimately, how are the audiences meant to respond? And here is an example that you can read. Alright, that's it for this video. Please let me know what recommendations you have for future topics. And if you do have any questions, leave them down below, but I hope this helped.